I talk to a lot of people who have the same question. They have a distributed workforce, or they have certain use cases in which they have people working from home, or they hire contractors in temporarily. The first thing that I would say is that remote workers is a big bucket, and you cannot treat all remote workers the same. In fact, it's going to be a spectrum. On the far end of the spectrum, if you have workers who are stationary, they work from home all the time, or they work at a remote office, and you know what their connectivity is going to be. You know that the pipe is adequate enough, and you know that they're not moving around a lot. They may be really good use cases for not managing the endpoint at all. In fact, you could be delivering a remote or virtual desktop or remote or virtual applications without having to worry about managing the underlying endpoint. On the other end of the spectrum, if you have, for instance, a distributed sales force where they're constantly moving, they're always on the go, and connectivity is intermittent, that's a really good use case for exploring some of the new and emerging technologies around modern management. The reality is, though, that organizations that find themselves managing endpoints today for distributed Salesforce on the one end of that spectrum, they're still very likely using the same imaging and provisioning technologies because that's all they have, that's all they know. What's emerging now, though, is modern management, and I would say, Gartner says, that modern management is a more efficient management paradigm for managing those types of endpoints where the applications have to be installed natively, where the connectivity is intermittent, and where the user experience really requires you to have a local physical endpoint. The second thing that you have to understand when it comes to managing remote workers is to understand what their constraints are. And this is where, again, it gets into user segmentation. For a particular use case, you may not have adequate pipe to deliver a virtual desktop, or you may have a requirement for a superb user experience. Those constraints are really important to understand because you can set up a fantastic technical solution and have it not actually meet your remote users' needs.